Hi, welcome to Daywalker Customs. Today we're going to be making this adorable embroidered chicken that's done in the hoop. It's from embroiderylibrary.com, and I've done their owls, and they were really cute. And so I thought when I saw the chicken, I said, I've got to make that. And so we're actually going to walk through step by step on how I made the one that I made, which was pictured here. So let's get started. So the first thing that I usually do is to plan out how I'm going to make my embroidery project. That includes selecting the colors of thread that I want, what fabrics I might use. If in this case it's like applique, defining the color change sheet, exactly how I want it to be laid out, what colors I'm going to put with it and everything. In this particular case, I wanted to define which pieces were the head, the upper body, the lower body, the tail, the base pieces, and the wings. And you can see here on the right that I've marked the individual pieces and what they go to. The labels on the actual pattern pieces correspond with this. And then in my color change sheet, as you see here, I've broken it up so that I know the first four colors are going with A, the next two are B, the next two are C, the next four are D, and so on, so that I have it all laid out and I know that this is the sequence in which I'll be making each of the pieces. So there's one each of these pieces that'll be made, and they're made with fabric, so the embroidery is done on those fabrics, and then we put it all together. So the next thing that they have you do is print out the die line patterns, which I've done here. And I've labeled each one of them so that I know what they are. So like, for example, I have 15072D underscore DL. DL stands for die line, and that's part of the tail. And you've got the upper body, the lower body, some of the felt pieces for the crust and the beak, and then the base, the wing, and the head. So these are my pieces that I've cut out the die lines for, and then we're going to use those die lines to cut out our fabrics. Once I kind of have the embroidery side planned and I've got my die line pieces printed and ready to go, I next had to choose my fabrics. What was I going to use to make my chicken with? And so you can see this was kind of my fabric selection along with my stabilizers that I was going to be using and some of the tools, my 505 spray and my scissors and my felt for the crust and the beak. And the fabrics that I had chosen to use with my chicken. So the two cream color slash yellow fabrics are for the body, and then I've got the wings and the head and the tail blue fabrics, and then the felt for the crust and the beak areas. So then I have all of my things prepared, and I'm ready to cut my fabrics out with my die line pieces now. Actually takes quite a bit of prep time to be able to get ready to do this. And this project isn't a quick project either because there's a lot of pieces that you're going to be embroidering. So the first thing here is I'm doing the wings. I have 4 pieces that I need to cut for the wings, and this is my fabric. So I am actually going to glue them with my 505 spray, it's a temporary adhesive spray, onto the right side of my fabric. I actually did it on the wrong side in some of these pictures, but you should do it to the right side of your fabric, and then you won't have to remember how to swap them so that they go in correctly like I had to do. Here you can see that I have cut out the first piece, one of the wings out of the 4. And I'm going to do this with each one of my die line pieces. So I'm going to use the 505 spray to adhere them to the right side. Don't do it the way I did it, to the right side of the fabrics. And then I'm going to cut out each and individual piece. And so I have completed cutting out all of my pieces, and you can see the lower body here. I laid one way and one the other way, so you could see that I actually have the die line pattern there, and then the fabric that I used for it. The next one on the bottom is the head, and then the base here, and then in the top row I've got my wings, my tail, my upper body, and then you can see my felt pieces there in the center. So everything's cut out, and I'm ready to start my embroidery. Each one of these pieces, when they are going to be embroidered in the hoop, are using a wash away stabilizer. So in my case, it's a heavier weight Solvay stabilizer that I'm using. And so the first thing that it does is it stitches out this die line. It's a guideline for you to be able to put your piece of fabric into. So then you use 505 spray on the back of the piece of fabric and you adhere it to the wash away stabilizer in your hoop. And then it will go around and tack it down and finish the rest of the embroidery. You can see here on the left that I've already done the head here. And then the one on the right is part of the body, the upper body. So it's already tacked that down. It's already sewn its decorative stitches. And I got about 2 of these pieces on each one of my hoops. This hoop happens to be an 8 by 13 magnetic hoop. And I love my magnetic hoops. They're so great. And so I got about 2 pieces on each hooping to be able to conserve and utilize my Solvay a little more effectively. And here is where my machine is actually doing the tack down stitch around the edge of that applique piece right onto my Solvay wash away. Now you do that same process with all of the pieces, the head, the lower body, the upper body, the wings, the base, all of those pieces you do exactly the same way. You're going to put the die line down, you're going to put your piece of fabric down, and it's going to do its stitching. Some of the pieces aren't going to have any embroidery embellishments on them at all. Like for example, the body, the upper lower body, the base, they don't have any, but your head and your wings and your tail do have. Here's a picture of the wings. And the one thing that's unique about the wings is that it has two-sided. Okay, so it's going to be a little bit different than the other pieces in that you're going to stop, like here on the right hand side, I've stopped. It's finished with its top piece and the embellishments on the top piece, actually finishing working on that middle row there. Then it's going to stop and I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to put my other piece of fabric on the back, and then I'm going to finish stitching the outside edge. That outside satin edge, the tack down and the outside satin edge, which are the last 2 stitches on each of the wings, those should be done with the same bobbin thread as you're doing on the top because they're visible on both sides. It doesn't get sewed down or anything. It gets tacked onto the chicken in the end, but it shows. So you'll want to make sure that you stop before it does the back tack down so that you can change your bobbin threads as well and make them match your top thread. The left wing here is finished and it's got both sides, and then the right wing is in the process of being finished. Once it's done with its embellishment across the top, then I will add that piece in the back, finish the 2 tack down and the satin stitches. After my pieces have been completed, as you can see here with all of my Solvay stabilizer, now I'm going to wash the stabilizer out of them, put them on a towel to dry, and then iron them with my iron. So you want to make sure you get most of the Solvay out of them. You don't want them left, otherwise when you iron it, it's going to stick to your ironing board. Ask me how I know. But you're going to want to take most of the Solvay out of this. The reason they use the Solvay is so that there's no stabilizer showing when you put some of these pieces together because they are kind of raw edged, the body pieces in particular, and the head piece. But they use that just as a good stabilizing material for these so that it didn't add extra bulk as well to the product. Okay, my pieces have all dried and I have ironed them out and we're about to start the assembly process. I'm so excited. We got through, it was a few hours, couple, 2, 3 hours of putting all those pieces together and getting them ready so that we could get to the assembly part. So the first part of the assembly is actually putting the head together with the body pieces together. So what I've done here is you match up, there's notches, which is really cool. There are notches here and here that you match up and pin your head to the upper body. And then you stitch along the very edge of the embroidery on that scallop part of the head to attach them together. So that scallop part of the head is actually going to be raw edged and it will show. So you'll want to make sure that you're stitching right along the edge of that embroidery with the same color thread that you used for that embroidery, so that it shows the least amount. So we're going to attach the heads to both of the upper bodies first. Now we're going to attach the head and upper body piece to the lower body piece and the tail. And there are 3 key areas, as you can see here, that I've marked that you'll want to pin first, because where the intersecting of the top and the lower body come together, there's no tab point. So there's these 3 tab points. Put those together, make it lay flat so that you know exactly how it's going to line up before you put your pins in for the rest of the upper and lower body there. It'll help to make sure that it's lined up properly if you do those 3 key parts first. And then you're actually going to sew along the number 1 line first. You're going to use the same thread that you used for embroidering that upper body piece, and you'll sew right along the uh, tack down stitch edge, just like you did with the head, and kind of hide that stitching to tack it down. Then you'll do the number 2 with the matching thread to secure the tail to that lower body piece, and then you'll have the main part of the chicken body sewed together. Once you've completed sewing the body pieces to the chicken, now it's time to put the cute little felt pieces on as well. So you can see I've pinned on my crest, my beak, and my little, I guess it's the gobbler on the chicken here. And you're going to pin them this way because when we put the other side of the chicken together and turn it right side out, then they'll stick up. So make sure you point them into the body, but there are little tabs, little stick out V tabs that you'll want to match up in these 3 places to put them on. And then you're going to just tack them down within that seam allowance, within the where the stitching is for the embroidery. Just tack it down in there so that they stay put and they don't move. And then you'll have that portion done. Now it's time to put my 2 body pieces together, and I'm going to line them up evenly. There's little tabs that stick out that you can match them up, and you're going to pin all the way from this lower left portion of the tail all the way around the top, around the head, and over to about where the neck is, to that little tab right there. You're going to leave the body, the main lower part of the body, you're going to leave that open. You're not going to sew that because you're going to attach the base to that part. So you only sew from where I've got my pins here. So from the left hand side of the tail, up the scallops, around the head, and down past where the beak would be to like about where the neck is, where that tab is there. So you're going to go ahead and sew 1/4 inch to sew them together. To prepare the base piece, we're only going to sew a very small portion of this base. We're going to sew from the edge on the left to that first notch, the first tab that sticks out there, about just a little past where I've got my pin sticking there. So just that little bit, it's about 1 inch there. You're only going to sew that. You're going to sew 1/4 inch. Same on the other side, from the edge to about where that first notch is, about 1 inch. That's all you're going to sew on both sides. That leaves that middle section on the flat side open for turning. So now at this point, we're going to put our base on, and you can see that I've pinned one side of the base. You're going to start with the front. There's a little notch or tab there that you're going to match up with the front point of your base. And you're going to pin it on starting at the front, and you're going to go all the way to the back. I did have to gather a little in the back. There was a little bit extra on my main part that was a little bit longer than my base, but you can ease that in really easy. Just put in some extra pins and it worked out perfect. So you'll want to pin just the one side. Then you're going to sew 1/4 of an inch down that seam. Then you'll turn it over, pin the other side from front to back, and sew that 1/4 inch there. And then you will have basically the body of the bird will be finished. In order for the stuffy to set correctly and not have the bulkies around the seams, you'll want to use your pinking shears to go around all of the seams on the chicken. You're going to want to make sure you are very, very careful though, because you don't want to cut where you sewn your 1/4 inch. So you're just going to be taking off about 1/8 of an inch around the edge just to kind of relieve some of that bulk. And as you can see here, this is where I have removed the bulk and trimmed all the way around all of my seams with my pinking shears. And once I have trimmed all my seams, it's time to turn him inside out. And he looks like a chicken, doesn't he? He's so cute. I just love this so far. So I've got him turned inside out, and it's about stuffing time. One thing I did do when I was turning him inside out is I have a pair of wooden chopsticks that I use a lot, and I just kind of use that to run along the seams. So I kind of, just pull it along the seams, and it kind of helps me to push the fabric out, so it's gives me the shape around my, like the curves and around the neck and head and places like that to make sure that it turns correctly. Now you're going to start using your polyfill stuffing, and I just get this from Joann's or Hobby Lobby or Michael's or whatever. It's an inexpensive bag of the stuffing, and then I just pull parts of it off and just start stuffing the chicken. What I usually do is try to stuff the head and then those curvy parts of the tail. Try and get some stuffing up into there, and you're going to want it to be fairly firm. You don't want it to be real squishy, but enough to give it form. So that your chicken, the pieces really have form and they're going to fit well. You're going to keep stuffing this until it is just about where you can't hardly close the seam on the bottom, but yet you can get the seam closed on the bottom. But you want it to be nice and firm and not too loose. So keep stuffing it, shape it as you're going, and then you'll have your chicken all stuffed and ready to sew closed. I pinned the closure on the belly, on the base, so that it would hold it in place for me as I was stitching it closed. I used the same thread that I used on that base color, so it's a light cream. And then just use a slip stitch, or like a quilting binding stitch, like where you go through a little bit of the front, catch the back, and just do your stitching all the way across to close that up real good. And then once you've done that, then you're going to sew the wings on. And I pinned my wings on so I knew exactly where I wanted them to be, so that they were symmetrical on both sides, and I knew that they would match up. I put a pin in the front and back of each one of the wings to hold them on. And then for the front of the wings, I did about, I would say 1 to 1.5 inches. I used the same color thread as the satin stitch is on the wing, and I caught it underneath. You go underneath the wing to catch the actual body, go up through the wing right where the satin stitch ends by the material, go up there and then all the way back over. And what you're doing is you're basically adding more threads across that satin stitch. And so you keep going, and I do, like I said, about 1 inch to maybe 1.5 inches on the front part of the wing to tack it to the body. And then in the back, I did right where the two pieces come together and make that V. I did about 4 or 5 stitches along that V to kind of hold it right there and kind of tack it down right there to sew my wings on. And so once you've finished doing the hand stitching to sew on the wings, then you have finished your chicken. And here he is. and I don't know what I'm going to call him, but I think he's really cute. But this is the embroidered chicken. And again, it's the In the Hoop chicken stuffy from Embroidery Library at emblibrary.com. And it's a lot of fun, and I hope you'll give it a try. And please post and show me your pictures of when you've done this. So thanks for joining us, and I hope to see you again with Daywalker Customs. Have a great day.